Distinguished panelists and dear participants, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another webinar of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement on incoming Biden administration and foreign policy challenges. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy, and a world free from conflict. We envision a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflicts are prevented or resolved, and peace is advocated. After the US election 2020, when Biden secured his seat for the White House, there are lots of interest around the world on what will be the foreign policy of US during Biden administration. Similar curiosity is in South Asia and the region regarding how US is going to engage with China and India and other great powers. To answer all these ambiguities, we have invited Professor Chintamani Mahapatra. Professor Chintamani Mahapatra is currently Rector, Pro Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and Professor of American Studies at the School of International Studies of JNU. He is the editor of Indian Foreign Affairs Journal and has held several positions such as member of UGC Review Committee, Area Studies Program, member of Fellowship Expert Committee at ICSSR, editor of Indian Foreign Affairs Journal, member of Editorial Board of Strategic Analysis, which is published by IDSA, member of Editorial Board of Diaspora Studies, and member of Committee of Studies, Academy of International Studies, Jamia Milia Islamia. Recently, he was Tagore Chair Professor at Yunnan University of China. He has 4 books, 1 edited volume, and has contributed chapters in more than 30 edited books. He has published over 70 research articles in reputed journals. He has been awarded a number of international fellowships, such as Fulbright Fellowship, Commonwealth Fellowship, and visiting fellow to undertake research in US, UK, Austria, Australia, and many other countries. He has been a visiting faculty in several UGC-run Academic Staff Colleges, the Foreign Service Institute of the Ministry of External Affairs, National Defense College, Army War College, Naval War College, and College of Air Warfare. Professor Mahapatra, you will have around 30 to 40 minutes to make your initial remark, which will be followed by question and answers. We would like to request all our participants to drop their questions in Zoom chat room and under the comment box on the Facebook Live. Professor Mahapatra, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all the participants. Dr. Pamul Jaswal, thank you yet again for inviting me to deliver a lecture on a topic which I have been studying for last more than 40 years. And right now the time is such that both the Americans and the non-Americans, people around the world, are very eagerly waiting for 20th January 2021 so that there is a change of guard in the White House. Certain amount of desperation, exasperation, and frustration can be found around the world because of last 4 years of Donald Trump administration. There are some countries, some people, some governments who have managed to have a very cordial ties with the Trump administration. But there are many, many countries which are alliance partners of the United States, which have not found any comfort in having a normal relationship with the United States. And that goes with so many other countries which faced different kind of challenges from Donald Trump. Now, there are Americans who have seen some positive development in America's engagement with the world. However, the broad consensus is the United States in the last 4 years by and large followed an isolationist policy. That means Donald Trump reduced America's engagement with the globe. And the US engagement with the globe since World War II is very well known to all the scholars and the intellectuals and those who are studying America, and even the governments in different countries. On almost every issue in every corner of the world, there was US engagement. But this certain amount of isolationism in the last 4 years is now raising a question about the new administration that is going to take charge since 20th of January 2021. Now, at a broad level, there is one category of people who are thinking that whether Joe Biden is going to follow a policy which can be described as restoration of America's traditional foreign engagements or reformation of the American foreign policy that has changed in last 4 years, or Donald Trump is going to really bring about revolution in America's engagement with the world. In other words, is he going to restore the Obama time foreign policy of the USA? Or is he going to bring about certain changes in what Donald Trump has done in the last 4 years? Or he's certainly going to alter and bring about a revolution, a complete transformation in the US engagement with the rest of the world. There are other people who think that there will be certain amount of restoration of America's engagement with the rest of the world. And of course, certain amount of reforms because the US policy under the Donald Trump administration has hurt many, many friendly countries, strategic partners, and the alliance partners. And he would like to bring about certain reform in the policy because by and large, the fundamentals of US foreign policy has remained the same, whether under a Democratic administration or under a Republican administration. There have been changes in focus, there have been changes in emphasis and priorities, but by and large it has been same. What is required right now is reformation. However, in order to bring about certain reformation, this school of people, they include both policymakers and the policy analysts who think the US foreign policy is badly in need of restructuring. Now, the big question is this. Even before Donald Trump came to power, the liberal international world order, which was followed by both the Democratic administration and the Republican administration, was already crumbling down. Now, the big question is this large and broad American goal of maintaining the liberal international order with bipartisan support, whether Joe Biden is going to really rebuild America and the global order, the liberal global order, will he succeed at all? So the big question is, the United States is no longer a leader in the sense that unchallenged dominant leader in world affairs. The relative American decline, which was an academic debate for a long time, all of us witnessed how the decline is visible in every part of the world. And the rise of China and expansion of Chinese influence is equally visible in the rest of the world. The resurgence of Russia and the emergence of India as major powers, and at the same time, relative decline of the European Union as an actor in world affairs are also visible. So, in this background, the United States will not be able to lead the world affairs. And the relative decline is very clear. The standing of the USA has been challenged by China, by Russia, by some even terrorist groups and other rising powers. However, people think that yes, the USA does not have the credential to lead the way it used to in the past. But certainly it is the most important player in global affairs and it will continue to do so. Now, then, what are going to be the very big priorities for the Joe Biden administration? Number one is rebuilding the American economy, particularly hit so badly by the global pandemic. And second, end the wars, which some people have characterized as never-ending wars, like in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the third, of course, the USA should be a humble global player, build consensus, negotiate and have partners, and try to deal with the challenges in coming weeks and days and months and years, along with others, not by itself. It does not have that capability, that caliber, that ability, that interest, that priority anymore. Now, when Joe Biden will enter the White House, he will certainly, he's already aware, but he'll certainly face the following that I'm going to say just now in bullet form. Number one, the US standing in the world had come down to such a level that even an important trade partner of the USA, Canada, and its leader Trudeau, refused to come to the American capital, at least as a symbolic step indicating implementation of the US Mexico Canada Act. Number two, North Korea. The American president, Donald Trump, was chasing literally the North Korean leader, the strongman, and in spite of all his initiative towards the North Korean leader, North Korea has not denuclearized. Venezuela, there was an attempt by the Trump administration to institute some kind of regime change in Venezuela, but he has not succeeded. Ukraine, the Russian control over Ukraine persists even now. Syria, same is the story. Russia actually is going to determine the future of Syria than the United States. It has no role at all. And in fact, the way the cyber attacks has taken place in the USA, and there are allegations that Russia was involved in it, it shows how a resurgent Russia needs to be controlled. And Donald Trump, in spite of all positive statements about the Russian leader Putin, he could not have a very cordial tie with Russia. Next is Iran. While Donald Trump walked out of the Iran nuclear deal, Iran reportedly has restarted some of its nuclear program because USA walked out of it. And now it is doing certain things where its bargaining power will be much more than before. Taliban. Donald Trump administration signed an agreement with the Taliban in Afghanistan to bring about peace and asking the Taliban to stop violence, start negotiation with the Afghan government. But all of us know very well how the Taliban violence in Afghanistan is rather taking place every other day. Now, China. Now, Chinese assertiveness, not only along the Sino-Indian border, but also in South China Sea and other parts of the world, is known to everyone. Donald Trump, in spite of his tough talk, in a very bellicose manner, the kind of rhetoric that Donald Trump used, when you see the ground realities, Donald Trump was silent about Hong Kong, silent about what is going on to the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province, could not do much except sending some warship for freedom of navigation in South China Sea, and could not restrain the Chinese determination to violate the line of actual control along the border with India. So, what the Trump administration has not been able to alter the assertiveness of China. Very close to the US, about 89 kilometers from the coast of Florida, Cuba. Even Cuba, there was an aspiration that there should be democratic change. Nothing has happened there. Mexico, Donald Trump again said Mexico is going to finance the building of the wall along the US-Mexican border. Mexico refused to pay, and Donald Trump could not do anything. The American Congress was very upset about the Trump administration supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, by violating all kinds of humanitarian rules and principles, was involved in the Yemeni war, and the Americans themselves, the congressional leaders, they did not like what Trump was doing. Now the big question is, what can Joe Biden do to restore the America's grandstanding and great position, the predominant role in world affairs? Now, of course, Joe Biden, before he even assumes the presidency, he's getting so many different kinds of advices from many people from within the USA and from outside the USA. Just to give you a few examples so that we can give justice to time, Henry Kissinger, the great diplomat, the great writer, national security advisor at one time, he says he advises the Biden administration not to focus too much on human rights violation in China and rather find out the ways and means of cooperating with China. This is the man who opened up China. The Sino-American détente took place under his guidance, direction, and even to some extent a leadership role. But he is now saying that no confrontation, no Cold War are going to help America. So it is better to find out ways and means of building positive relationship with China. Stein is saying that Joe Biden should allow Russia to win the war in Syria and should not get involved in Syria. The Secretary General of NATO is also giving a warning to Joe Biden that Donald Trump has taken a vow to withdraw the American troops from Afghanistan. Negotiations are going on in the midst of the Taliban violence against the commitment the Taliban gave in Doha. However, Joe Biden, which has given clear hint that even he would not like to continue with the prolonged war, the quote-unquote endless war in Afghanistan, and he would only keep only a small number of troops there, maybe up to 2,500 or so for counterterrorism purposes. But the NATO Secretary General is urging, requesting, advising, please don't do anything without consulting the NATO forces. It should be a collective decision and not a unilateral withdrawal by the Americans from Afghanistan. Now, the Russians are expecting that sanctions will be lifted and Joe Biden will be wise enough to build cordial ties with Russia, then continue with the sanctions policy of Donald Trump. Now, the bipartisan forces in the US Congress have both expectation because Joe Biden apparently is going to be a person who will believe in multilateralism, negotiation, and diplomacy, and not the kind of policy Trump adopted towards Iran. And however, they're warning that you should not get back to the Iran nuclear deal. That would be disastrous. You talk to them, but it should not be the same deal at all. So they're giving their own advice. The Pakistanis have their own advice for the Joe Biden administration. They want to draw the attention of Indian policy towards Kashmir and say that Joe Biden should talk about human rights violation in Kashmir, interfere in Kashmir affairs, and undo the abrogation of Article 370. And they are painting even the government of India as a very autocratic government, and Joe Biden believer in democracy, so he didn't interfere in Indian affairs. That is the advice by the Pakistanis without being aware that this kind of allegations are much more in size and content and depth in Pakistan. And they're hoping that the way Donald Trump has suspended the American military assistance and the economic assistance, they hope that Joe Biden would be, restoring some of the military and economic assistance to Pakistan, and Pakistan would openly support the US idea of slower, gradual withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, Japanese, South Koreans, Australians in the Indo-Pacific region, the traditional American alliance partners, are also hoping that Joe Biden would not adopt the kind of policy towards alliance partners of his predecessor, and it should be a restoration of alliance relationship completely. Now, the European Union and most of the European countries are very, very excited that Joe Biden, being a transatlanticist, will restore the traditional partnership, both economic as well as military, with the European countries. So these are the expectations. Now, let me underline a few points. What Joe Biden is likely to do. I'm not involved in any forecast or any astrological predictions about how the US foreign policy is going to be in next 4 years. However, on the basis of our understanding and of course Joe Biden's long experience in foreign policy, he was the chairman of the American Foreign Relations Committee. He has served as the American Vice President under Obama for 8 years, and he's the foreign policy man. He understands the world very well, every part of the world. So, he being so, what is likely? What is likely? One, you know, Joe Biden is not going to change Donald Trump's policy towards Israel and de-recognize Jerusalem. Sorry, not de-recognize, and not he's not going to withdraw the American embassy from Jerusalem back to Tel Aviv. That means it is going to be more of the same. Number two, uh, certainly he will stop the erosion of American investment around the world, and he will try to re-engage with the rest of the world. But the priority is going to be domestic. The restoration, the rebuilding of the American economy, and the health security situation in the USA needs a tremendous amount of attention and hard work. And an inwardly engaged Joe Biden will have less ability and the less leeway to be the foreign policy advisor, at least in next 1 year or 2 years. That will be his priority. He is not going to withdraw troops from Germany and other parts of Europe the way Donald Trump was trying to do, or even in the Indo-Pacific region. What he is likely to do is certainly try to end the American military presence in Iraq and Afghanistan, not in a hurried fashion, but slowly and steadily, and he will keep only a minimum number of forces for counter-terrorism purposes, and not to allow Afghanistan to become a stage for any further attack on American soil or the soil of the American alliance partner. One thing is very clear, Joe Biden himself has stated not once, many times, the way Donald Trump, as part of his withdrawal from world affairs, withdrew from WHO and even Paris Climate Accord. Now, Joe Biden most likely will not only go back to WHO and rejoin the Paris Accord, I think he'll be more proactive in seeking certain transformations in the activities of WHO. And even in Paris Accord, I think the environmental policy of Joe Biden will be much, 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 much better than Donald Trump. He's going to play a proactive role. What he has not said anything yet is about the TPP. Now, Donald Trump withdrew from the TPP on the very first day in the White House. Now, TPP is linked with larger development and questions of peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Interestingly, China has been able to finally complete the negotiations on RCEP, and even American alliance partners like Japan and South Korea, Australia, and even New Zealand, Singapore, they're all part of RCEP. So, what kind of engagement Joe Biden is going to do in Indo-Pacific region is a big question that all of us are going to watch very, very carefully. On the one hand, the challenge from China. On the other hand, America's economic interest in the Indo-Pacific region, which is under the challenge from China. USA is not in TPP. China has succeeded in RCEP, and the new kind of comprehensive TPP that is in place, whether Joe Biden is going to join there or call for another round of negotiations, we don't know yet. But there is an expectation that he should do something about it. Otherwise, China's hegemony in this part of the world will be much stronger than what it is today. Two important things that, of course, everyone is talking about is what kind of policy Joe Biden is going to adopt towards China, number one, and towards Russia. With China, initially there was a cold confrontation between the two, and Donald Trump literally made it an economic Cold War by imposing tariffs. And as far as Russia is concerned, imposing sanctions on Russia and the Russian flexing of muscle in what the Chinese are doing in South China Sea, the Russians are doing in the Eurasian landmass, including in Syria, Ukraine, elsewhere, annexation of Crimea, and so many things that they are doing. So the whole world, particularly the foreign policy analysts and the watchers of global affairs, they are going to see how Joe Biden is going to engage China and Russia. Will he succeed? Will he not succeed? will he adopt a policy where he's going to compete with China and not confront with China? Or he's going to adopt a tougher role towards China because the reality has changed? We don't know. As far as non-proliferation arms control disarmament is concerned, one thing that Joe Biden is most likely going to do, the START negotiation. The START is going to come to an end in February, roughly about 2 weeks after he becomes the American president. Now, if it does not agree and extend the START, which is offered by the Russians, then that the last arms control agreement, nuclear arms control agreement between US and Russia will be uh, ending. No more agreement is in place. Most likely, he's going to do that. Now, I'll conclude by making just one or two broad points. Then we can have a Q&A. This is such a vast theme that you cannot cover in 30-40 minutes. But I thought I could flag a few points which can be debated and discussed. Now, all of us will have to realize that the future is not going to be the replication of the past. Those who are talking about a restoration of US engagement with the rest of the world, and they're expecting that Joe Biden has appointed those people who have already served in the Obama administration, and they are going to restore in a way the Obama policy towards the rest of the world. I think they will be mistaken. The actors may be same. They're very highly experienced, knowledgeable people. But the ground realities are different. It cannot be another 4 years of Obama foreign policy. In any case, Joe Biden had his own approach and certain amount of differences with Obama on many issues, including towards Afghanistan and Pakistan and so many other issues. Now, he's not going to, replicate Obama era foreign policy. He would like to go down the history as a person who had his own mark in the making and implementation of the American foreign policy. So it is not going to be just restoration of America's engagement with the rest of the world and some kind of Obama 2 administration. Now, number two, many people are now saying that probably they're right also, that Joe Biden is going to follow a foreign policy which will benefit the middle class in the United States. And what does that mean? Middle class foreign policy? That means even before Donald Trump, certain amount of deglobalization efforts had already started. In Europe, in America, they realized that globalization, which was pushed by them in a very big way across the world, there are so many people in their own countries which have lost in the process. Now, the loss of jobs, the loss of manufacturing, the loss of so many other things. Now, while the rich Americans, big companies made a lot of money by doing business with the rest of the world, the middle class Americans, even those who are indulged in small scale, medium scale manufacturing, they have suffered. So he's going to adopt a foreign economic policy which will ultimately help the middle class America. He's going to toe the centrist line. He's not going to listen to the progressives completely, nor he is going to push globalization. He will be a centrist, very balanced kind of policy he's most likely to take, where the American people will get jobs, manufacturing will be restored, business activities will go on within the USA. The supply chain, which has been disrupted because of the Chinese behavior, new kind of supply chains should be erected. So that kind of policy is going to be done. Then, of course, the muscular approach that Donald Trump did and the kind of offensive language that he did, now we can hear more and more sophisticated language in foreign policy, but let's not expect that only language is important. Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they agreed on quite a few areas of American foreign policy, the fundamental issues. The goal will remain the same. The means may differ a little bit, and the methodology of doing it will also be different. Let me conclude by saying that the following few countries are going to be the most important challenges for Joe Biden: China, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir. It was very interesting and illuminating lecture. We learned a lot. We have received lots of questions. So let me, without spending any minutes, move to that. There are lots of questions on how is Biden going to deal with Quad, and there are also questions like how Biden going to deal with Quad at the time when Shinzo Abe have resigned.
Hmm. I'll be very brief because if you're saying there are quite a few questions, I'll be very brief. You say when Obama was in power, he had the policy of pivot to Asia, and later it was described as rebalancing Asia. Now, when Donald Trump came to power, the new term Indo-Pacific was written down into the national security strategy of the United States, which is issued by successive presidents. Now, Quad is not an agreement, it is not a TT, it is just an understanding and kind of dialogue process. All the four members of Quad, they have been hit by the Chinese behavior, both in economic policies as well as the physical, show of force by China. Quad will be in place. What is likely is there may be a change of nomenclature. There may be because every president will try to have something new. So from pivot to Asia to rebalancing to Indo-Pacific and Quad, there may be change in nomenclature, but in reality, all these members of the Quad will have to be together. Change of regime is not going to change um, the main goal of Quad, which is not necessarily anti-China, but certainly trying to create a situation which can maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, despite the kind of problems it may crop up because of China, North Korea, and so many other countries in the region.
Let me move to the other question. It's on India-US relations. Like, what is the future of US-India relations under Biden? Will there be any change in India-US relations compared to the previous administration in United States?
For a long time, particularly since 2000, March 2000, Indo-US strategic partnership has been having a very independent and upwardly moving trajectory. It is going better and better and better. There are many, many hiccups in between, but all those challenges that came in between did not derail the strategic partnership. Now, Joe Biden has appointed Mr. Antony Blinken as the Secretary of State, and he has not once, many times made it very clear how the Indo-US strategic partnership will be further strengthened under Joe Biden. There are people who say that uh, hmm, statements have been made on Kashmir, and the Democratic Party has a different take on India's policy towards Kashmir and NRC and CAA and all that. That is true. But once somebody comes to power, outside the power to do, I think under Joe Biden, the fundamental strategic partnership will continue. So even Sullivan, who is the national security advisor, is very supportive of Indo-US relationship. And in the face of the Chinese challenge, even imagining that it would be anything other than what it is or what is going to be better is not appropriate at the moment. China is a big challenge, will continue to be a challenge. India is a friend, and Indo-US relationship is increasingly becoming very clear and vocal about the Chinese challenge. So I think it will remain in place.
So there is another question regarding small countries. Like, how do you look at US dealing with smaller South Asian countries under Biden? Like, you are aware that Mike Pompeo recently visited India and he also visited Sri Lanka and Maldives. So what will be the changes? I mean, how the smaller countries will be seen by United States, smaller South Asian countries?
There are a few foreign policy initiatives of the Trump administration which Joe Biden is going to continue. As I gave the example of Jerusalem and the shifting of American capital. And likewise, this is another area engaging the smaller countries in the Indo-Pacific. Donald Trump, particularly Pompeo, was very active because he knew that Chinese are making inroads in such a big way that unless the smaller countries are given a kind of alternative, it will be only China dominated. So the whole idea is to enable the smaller countries not to be dependent on any source, any particular country, and rather they should be allowed to have alternative sources of relationships so that they can maintain a good, independent, centrist foreign policy. I think Joe Biden, being a person of foreign affairs himself, he understands all these nitty-gritty details and the nuances and how to engage the smaller countries. I think the same policy rather may be done in a much better and deeper way, but it is not going to happen very soon because the priorities are different. But the goal will remain, and I think Joe Biden is not going to alter that policy.
So recently you said that China will have bigger, United States will have bigger challenge to deal with China. So, but don't you think that US reliance on China will further increase due to domestic factors, as China might have to, as US might have to focus more on economic stress and healthcare policies?
Whatever little I have gathered, the information and the analysis from the American congressional sources and the media sources, there is a consensus among all the analysts that although Donald Trump has imposed very high tariff on China, the economic situation will rather demand that Joe Biden should not lift all those tariffs. During the campaign, even after getting elected, the president-elect Joe Biden has given hints that he would have a different approach towards China, but some of the policies in place which are going to protect the American economic interest. For example, the American businesses. For example, how to protect the American companies from Chinese industrial espionage. For example, how to protect the American interest from Chinese predatory economic practices in trade and investment abroad. So it is not going to be so brazen and so direct, but in a very subtle way. Joe Biden is going to engage China and Joe Biden is not going to allow further erosion of the American standing in the world. He will see, as he says, America is back. That means Donald Trump, which walked away from many, many engagements around the world, Joe Biden is going to be more proactive and try to project America as the true leader. May not be the sole dominant unilateral leader, but a leader which can build more consensus.
Thank you, sir. There's another question on Afghanistan. You have touched upon it, but maybe you want to add something more. What is the future of peace in Afghanistan under Biden? What would be its impact on India?
This is the most difficult situation, and I'll not say question. The question is very valid. It's a good question. Joe Biden tried to have a dialogue with Taliban, and he succeeded finally. He invited the Taliban to Doha and sent his people, including Mike Pompeo, to negotiate with them so that he can end American intervention in Afghanistan. I think he has miserably failed because Taliban did not abide by its commitment at Doha to stop violence and start negotiations with the Afghan government. Initially, the Afghan government itself was not very comfortable with releasing the prisoners, but that was sorted out later. But the violence has not stopped. I think the Taliban is buying time. Taliban knows that if Donald Trump could not do anything, what can Joe Biden do uh, in pushing them? So they are hopeful that Americans are desperate. Large number of American people do not want any kind of American involvement in Afghanistan anymore. They are completely under some kind of war fatigue. They want the boys back home. They've lost many lives. They have gained nothing. Democracy has not been stabilized. Taliban controls a large part of area in Afghanistan. Um, Even after so many years of NATO and American forces being there, so if once they leave, obviously it is going to be a Taliban-ruled country. So there are many worries there. Some of them are saying that it is going to be something like what happened in 1989 when the Soviet Union withdrew the forces. Ultimately, what happened was a kind of civil war. So they are saying that it may be a civil war yet again because the Afghan forces, which have been trained by the NATO forces and the American forces, you know, they are not able to develop a capability and sufficient amount of equipment and financial power to really fight with the Taliban. And if the NATO forces, American forces are supporting the Afghan National Army and they're not able to really give a blow to the Taliban, imagine these guys are talking about withdrawal. So the situation is very dire and India is very worried. So are many other countries. They are really worried. And Pakistan, even Pakistan, I would say even Pakistan is slightly worried about the future because the general understanding is Pakistan has good connection with Taliban. There is no doubt about it. It was Pakistan's help that led Taliban to go and participate in Doha and negotiate with them. But I was reading some Pakistani analysis where they are saying Pakistan's job is over. They have only persuaded them to go to Doha. But Taliban does whatever they want. They don't take any kind of diktat from anybody, including Pakistan. So their control over Taliban is very limited. So now the big question is whether Joe Biden is going to sincerely involve India, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, China, many other countries in a collective decision making on what about the future of Afghanistan, or is it going to go solo the way the Donald Trump administration did? Even Afghan government was not allowed to participate in the meeting, and they had a parallel meeting with the Afghan government and the Taliban, which is not the right policy at all. So this is a very muddy area, difficult to see the clarity. So more and more confusion might take place for quite some time.
So there is another question that Trump initiated dialogue with North Korea. There was UAE-Israel peace deal. Do you see continuation of such initiative by Biden? If Biden is going to continue, then what is new that Biden will initiate to show his distinct foreign policy?
Number one, Biden administration will miserably fail in handling North Korea. Donald Trump failed, even Obama failed, Bill Clinton failed, everybody failed as far as North Korea is concerned. North Korea, for all practical purposes, has become a de facto nuclear weapon power. Now, North Korea has developed even intermediate and long range missile capability. It is, in a way, long time ago I tweeted, it is really stupid to expect North Korea to give up the weapons and get some money, some deal for the energy or financial assistance or lifting the sanctions. Nobody gives up nuclear weapons just like that. So if Joe Biden is going to engage North Korea as it is and not have very high expectation of denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula, probably he will succeed. Otherwise, he will not. As far as the Middle East is concerned, another muddy area, you know, Donald Trump was about to veto a congressional resolution about not supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia because they are being used in killing innocent people in Yemen. Now, whether Joe Biden is going to do, most likely he will have a different policy towards Saudi Arabia. But Donald Trump's ability, through whatever means, for some kind of rapprochement between or a new kind of relationship, diplomatic ties between UAE and Bahrain and Sudan and then Morocco with Israel, this is a grand success. Successive American administrations were trying to do something which Donald Trump could do in a matter of a couple of years. I think Joe Biden will rather build on that. He will try to build on that rather than change the policy in the Middle East.
We have another question from the audience, like how Biden will deal with Cuba. Will he follow Obama policy of rapprochement?
Joe Biden is a person who believes in multilateralism, negotiation, and diplomacy. And as far as Cuba is concerned, I think he will try to follow the same Obama policy and improve ties with Cuba. That is my belief. But people say that you cannot clap with one hand. So what happens within Cuba is equally important. And then, of course, there are a large number of lobby groups within the USA which would not like to have a good relationship with a non-democratic regime in Havana. So even their role is very, very critical. Uh, in any case, I think the Joe Biden administration will certainly try to engage both Cuba and Venezuela and try to promote democratization of Western Hemisphere, including Cuba and Venezuela. Whether he will succeed, we do not know, because even China, nobody says China is now a communist country. Right? Soviet Union collapsed, Euro communism collapsed, but Cuba, a small tiny country, could withstand the American pressure, and the regime continues. So I think it will be more of the same, rather than any big transformation taking place in the near future.
There's another question related on Iran, like what is the importance of involving Iran in the Afghanistan negotiation? Does this also mean Joe Biden will resurrect the JCPOA?
JCPOA is such an important issue. Three important strategic partners of the United States in Europe, France, Germany, and Britain, they did not listen to Donald Trump. They continued to be in JCPOA. And those European partners would like the Joe Biden administration to re-enter the JCPOA. But Joe Biden will be under tremendous pressure from within the Congress and particularly the Republican Party because they are under influence of even Israel. So Israelis, some of the Arab countries, and the Republican members in the Senate who do not want USA to have cordial ties with Iran will create problem. However, it is also important that Iran policies should not be such that Iran would be able to finally move into a path where becoming a nuclear weapon power will be the fait accompli. Nobody wants Iran to become a nuclear weapon power. So Joe Biden has to play ball, has to negotiate. And whether he would be able to negotiate a new agreement, we do not know. However, leaders and Joe Biden, from the very beginning, they have been saying that JCPOA was the very first step towards preventing Iran from becoming a nuclear weapon power. That was the first step and not the last step. The other two issues are Iran's involvement in the Middle East and supporting some forces like Hamas and others, which are anti-American forces, and the American and the Iranian missile buildup are two issues where they would like to engage Iran. So I think negotiations are going to start, and it will take quite some time. It is not going to be isolating Iran anymore, engaging them. And one of the best ways to engage them would be to allow them to even discuss things on Afghanistan. Because they are also a stakeholder in Afghanistan. They are Hazaras, they are the Shias, they are under attack from the Sunni Taliban.
And so we're running out of time. We have a maximum 10 minutes, so I'll try to club a few questions. Like with many countries in the region joining RCEP, is US losing its allies to China in recent times?
USA has been losing out to China for last several years, not just recent time. China has become the number one trade partner of more than 100 countries. China has become the number one trade partner of most of the American allies, including Japan. and South Korea and Australia and New Zealand. At one time, even India was in the same boat. So Chinese economic success has been remarkable. The economic growth rate was galloping like a horse. China had become the number one manufacturer in the world, number one consumer of luxury goods in the world. Even large number of Americans and Europeans were living in Hong Kong and doing business under Chinese assistance and help. Uh, so China has become the number one banker to the United States of America. If we go by the reports, Chinese economy is now doing much better than the American economy. So keeping all this in mind and the role of RMB. Now RMB is being used even in cross-border trade with Bangladesh and Myanmar and Cambodia and Laos. China has got that basket of currency thing in IMF recently, um, special drawing rights and all that, plus the influence. Now RMB is part of the basket of currency, like dollar and EU and all. So it is a very big challenge. Russia, the former Soviet Union, was able to challenge the USA militarily. China is able to compete with the Americans economically. And because of the new economic wealth, China is also improving very fast in science, technology, artificial intelligence, and giving a big headache to the Americans. The whole plan to make China completely self-sufficient on IT-related matters, including artificial intelligence by 2025, has given a very big wake-up call to the Americans. You see, so I think this challenge is big. The whole idea is not to isolate China, but engaging China at Chinese terms and conditions are also no good for anyone. We cannot replace one hegemon by another hegemon. What we need is a multipolar world order where the role of even small countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and big countries like China, India, Russia are also important. We don't want any hegemonic world order. We want a multipolar world order.
There's another question on climate change, like how Biden's climate change plan is going to shake global energy market.
Uh, this is where there's going to be a lot of problem within the USA. You know, Donald Trump just day before yesterday, he signed some of the orders allowing the energy producers in the USA access to the private land and public land both. Private land was there earlier, public land. Now, on the one hand, Joe Biden has appointed John Kerry as a special envoy on energy and environment. On the other hand, Donald Trump has adopted some policies which are going to give a big challenge to Donald Trump. The fracking issue, for example. Uh, this is where even the Democratic Party leaders were fumbling. They don't know what to do. If they stop fracking, what is going to happen is America may lose its position as energy independent. Now, and of course, at the same time, large number of people will be out of jobs. And if they allow it to continue, that will certainly affect the environment. So, environment is a very complex issue where Joe Biden will definitely adopt those policies, clean energy technology, which is massively used, and Obama administration took so many steps, and Donald Trump administration rolled back. Uh, Further rollback is most likely. I think Joe Biden will have a better environment approach than Donald Trump.
So there's a very interesting question. One, that most of the media reported that Biden has five major challenges, and almost all are domestic, like pandemic, economy, polarization, and defining his presidency. So the question is, how challenging are those challenges for Biden? One, second, are are those going to inbox United States within the country and diminish its global image?
Okay. Uh, you know, as far as domestic and foreign policies are concerned, the time has come where we cannot, compartmentalize them. This is domestic and this is foreign. Almost every domestic issue has foreign policy implications. And development that takes place outside the border of a country directly influence the domestic issues. I was very fond of at one time saying that if the price of wheat will increase by $1 in Kansas City, that can affect a farmer in Punjab and Haryana. In that sense, it is truly, if not globalized, internationalized world. So the domestic challenges that the person who asked the question enumerated. One is pandemic. Now, is the USA the only country facing pandemic? No. Are the American doctors and the scientists only American? No. Are they collaborating with others? Yes. Did they approach even European and other companies to manufacture some kind of vaccine? Yes. Now, it was the USA which had a global health policy. No other country has. So whatever they achieve at home will be relevant to the rest of the world. It is going to be even a big business and all, and they may seek the assistance of other countries, even at some time, while talking tough against China. Even the Chinese PPE and other kinds of things landed in USA, and Donald Trump accepted them. So it is not purely domestic. It's a challenge, yes, very big challenge, no doubt about it. But it has international connection. Economy. Is the US going to be autarkic? No. Almost every country in the world has invested a lot of money in America. If the American economy goes down, the global economy will go down. Every country will be affected who do trade, investment, and so many other kinds of businesses with America. Can America do it alone? Completely autarkic? America first only, America alone? No. In order to restore the economic health of the USA, the Biden administration will have to craft a new trade policy, new investment policy. Probably, this is my hunch, the American policy is going to be more muscular in opening other markets and pushing American investment in other countries. Number three, as far as the domestic polarization is concerned, it's a fact. There's no doubt about it. In fact, there are worries that Trump might come back to power in 2024. Never before in the USA, people talked about the next election even before the president-elect gets into the White House. Why? They think Trump may or may not be there, but Trumpism has already taken deep root in the USA. The 70 million people who have voted Trump, not just because of his personality, but because of his policies. Some of the policies that he articulated in a very crude fashion won the hearts of millions of Americans. And this domestic polarization is certainly going to create a lot of hurdles for Joe Biden. And the most significant one in the near future is the outcome of election for the post of two Senate seats in Georgia. Now, if the Republicans win that and Democrats don't have the majority in Senate, most of the foreign policy initiatives will face tremendous amount of challenge at home. So, in other words, what I'm saying, very in two lines, what's happening abroad affects American domestic situations, and what America is going to tackle domestically will have international reverberations. It is not either or. It is not watertight compartment. It is not the Chinese wall this side, that side.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Let me end with the last question for today. Like there are apprehensions that US is going to be soft on China. So how soft can US go on China? Like what is the upper threat?
You know, there is no country in the world, probably except Pakistan, which do not aspire for a top policy towards China. That includes the USA. People may not say, but they do feel. They may not say because they're under pressure. They're under pressure because of the Chinese political, economic, and other behavior, and even the military behavior. Out of fear, out of concern, some of them are tight-lipped about it. So, what Donald Trump appeared to be very tough, but was it tough on the changes taking place in Hong Kong? No. Was it tough on what is going on in Xinjiang to almost 1 million people under concentration camp kind of situation? No. So Donald Trump saw nothing except money for America. Wherever the business was helpful, he forgot about it. Right? But Joe Biden is a different person with a different background, with a different ambition, and no matter what Henry Kissinger advises, he is going to take certain policies which are ultimately going to pressurize China morally, ethically, politically, diplomatically, economically, even militarily. Joe Biden would not like America to, would not like China to replace the USA as number one hegemon, either in the Indo-Pacific or in the world. And any country which would like to do that cannot have a soft policy. There will be adjustments. Adjustment will be ramification. When Donald Trump imposed tariff, there were ramifications, negative ramifications for all the countries as well. So we need not worry too much about soft or hard. What is important is maintaining one's independence and not allow any one country to bulldoze others.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the very interesting discussion. We really learned a lot. We are really thankful for your valuable time. We hope to have you again in future. And I'm sure all our participants have also benefited from it. We'd like to thank all our participants for their interesting questions. We hope to see you tomorrow at our next event on China in the post-COVID world order. Thank you very much.